says how to get your certificate 3 ways. Tell me in the chat if you can't. Okay, so because we always get asked this question about certificates. So number 1, a link to the downloadable and editable certificate. We'll be sharing that at the end of the webinar. You'll see that on the next slide at the end. You'll be able to edit and download your certificate on that page after the webinar. So there's a link there, which is where you'll be able to see the recording as well. And also there'll be a downloadable PDF version of the certificate. And if you've registered, which if you're in this webinar you have, you'll get a thank you for attending email tomorrow. And in that thank you for attending email, there will also be a link to the certificate. There is also, when this webinar finishes, you should automatically have a page open on your screen, which is a survey, a feedback survey. And if you complete that survey, there's also a certificate, a link to the certificate there. Use Google Chrome or Internet Explorer. Firefox doesn't work for some reason. You'll see when you open it that there's a space for you to type your name, and you can download the certificate that way. Okay, as I say, we'll be putting links in at the end of the webinar so that you have the link there. Okay, that's my bit done. I'm going to pass over to Maria Jose. So just to introduce her, she's been teaching English since 2003, and she's a British Council online moderator. Previously, she worked as a remote teacher in Plan Cebal, providing English lessons through video conferencing to public schools in Uruguay. She is also the learning technologist at St. Brendan's School, where she works with primary and secondary school teachers in the use of technology in the classroom. She holds a master's in digital technology and communication and education from the University of Manchester, and another MA in TESOL teacher education from the same university. She's a Cambridge ESOL oral examiner for YL exams, the KET and PET. So Maria, over to you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, so you can start. Okay, over to you. Thank you, Maria Jose.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone, for coming. So I hope that you're all, there we go. I hope that you're all getting used to the new realities. It's not easy teaching online, and if you've had the added bonus of having to teach online to children, then that's even more difficult. So, you know, the world has been put on hold, but our education hasn't. And what I've noticed is that teachers from all over the world are trying to find desperately ways on how to better adapt ourselves. So, hopefully I'll be able to give you some tips and from the experience I've had, and then some from ideas and comments I've heard from my colleagues. So first of all, the idea of today is by the end of today's session, you will have explored definitions of online learning, reflected on our online pedagogy, looked at setting up an action plan, discussed making the most of our video conferencing sessions, and looked at some types of activities. As Paul said, if you have any questions throughout, just please type them in the Q&A. I've got it open, so if you have any questions, I will be answering them. So first of all, there are some definitions that we need to think about. Remote teaching and online teaching. Remote teaching, we are talking about teaching through video conferencing. And online teaching, it's the combining of the synchronous and asynchronous communication. Synchronous is what we have at the moment, where we have a live communication. Asynchronous is, for example, email or a chat where I post a question and then maybe somebody else answers it, all at the different times. Okay, so the idea behind remote teaching and online teaching is that there's a plan, there's a syllabus, everything has been planned beforehand. This is not something we have had much time to plan. Let's face it, all of a sudden, all depends on the different countries we are in, but the government all of a sudden decided that's it, schools will be closed, and we've had to adapt quickly. Some schools have had the opportunity to adapt quicker, others have been taking it a little bit slower, but the whole process behind remote teaching and online teaching, it requires this type of planning a syllabus, sitting down, thinking about materials, creating modules, all of these things. If you are familiar with our British Council online learning, you know that we have modules, you have forums, there is a thought behind it. Whereas what we are doing at the moment is emergency remote teaching. There's a fantastic article on emergency remote teaching. I really recommend it. It's by Hodges, Moore, Lockie and Bond. And they define it as adapting quickly to teaching online due to an external force. So this is what is happening now. Okay, so one of the things that we are noticing is that we've adapted, and we need to find out how best to continue. I'm sure most of you are working now with online learning. I'm sure that you've been working very hard and trying to adapt things. Now it's time that we've had this last a bit longer. I'm pretty sure most of us have been around the same, maybe 3, 4, 5 weeks or more that we've been in lockdown. And I think the initial panic has calmed down. If you're working at a language institute and you're working at a school, there are different realities. I think schools, we panicked more. And we threw things to all our students because we didn't want for them to fall behind. Now there's a time that we can calm down. Students are getting used to the rhythm. Parents are starting to get used to the rhythm, because it's also that aspect. We need to be able to work alongside parents. So all of this new learning has caused a bit of some issues. So in online learning, there's more to online learning than using video conferencing. This is the first thing we need to remember. It's the same as in the classroom. There is more to classroom teaching. There's more to education than teaching, face-to-face teaching, than what we do face-to-face. There are other things that we are doing in the background that help with teaching. Well, this is the same thing. And nobody expects us to become instant online teachers and succeed at it. Okay. Again, this I've taken from the article that I mentioned, and you have the link, and you will have access to the slides, so you can just click on the link and you'll be able to access this article. These are some of the options that online learning design provides. We've got the different modalities, the pacing, the student instructor, the pedagogy, the roles of online assessment, instructor, student role, same things that we're talking about when we talk about face-to-face, okay? What we're happening is, this is probably our reality, okay? We are fully online, so there's no blended. We don't see our students, we don't touch our students. They're not in the classroom. We don't have that access to them in the physical classroom. Even if we are doing video conferencing, it's still fully online. It's probably going to be class-paced, the pacing, or syllabus. We do have a syllabus we follow, but because I think it's a great opportunity today that because of all this chaos, we are starting to see some more flexibility when it comes to the syllabus, because the most important thing is that kids are learning, kids stay calm. They are young learners, remember. So we can't be expecting so much, we can't add more stress to them as what they are suffering now. Probably a student instructor ratio is 1 to 35. So we are still overburdened with the amount of students and amount of work that we are doing, but it's not more than what we are used to in the face-to-face class. And this is what worries me the most, is that our pedagogy has probably gone back. I think one of the greatest things that we have as English teachers is that there's so much research. There's so much that we can learn from research. For some reason, if you're an English teacher, you have access to so much research in education than any other subject. So we have made we have gone through so many changes, from the first, grammar translation, to the teacher, knowing everything, to getting exploratory, more collaborative work. And because this is something that we are, it's a new world for us. It's a place where we don't feel comfortable, we don't control. And let's face it, all teachers, we're all control freaks. The online world kind of took us by storm. Even if you are used to the online world, there are still things that, have moved our balance. We had a certain level of control over our classrooms, and we are seeing that there's not much control. So what have we done? We've gone backwards in our pedagogy and gone through the expository type of teaching. So we need to be able to find ways that we can involve our students. Okay, we are probably giving, the instructions are probably ours. The student role is probably listening and reading. And the online communication is probably a bit of both, asynchronous and synchronous. Okay, so the source of feedback is probably just us. Okay, I'm just going to read our question. Susan Cruz, is it advisable to explore differentiated teaching? Exactly. The thing is, we need to have the tools to be able to do that. Okay, so I'm going to get through some of those tools. So one of the things is, first of all, we need to create this action plan. Short-term and long-term planning. The thing is that because this is so new, this is such a new world, we don't really know how long it's going to last. Governments might be saying that it's going to last up until this amount of time. I'm here in Uruguay, and we aren't sure yet how long we're going to stay here. Personally, I'm planning until July, so at least I have my long-term plan, and then I'm going month by month. So I took advantage of our Easter break, and I stopped and I said, okay, I need to plan my short-term plan, my long-term and short-term. So I'm going to finish this, and I've removed things from the syllabus because there are things that we can't handle. We can't expect to be doing the things at the same pace as if face-to-face. I've had the opportunity to be an online learner and an online teacher, and the reality is that things are done slower, but you can get to the same or even a deeper level of learning than if you do face-to-face. So let's take advantage of that. Okay, and one of the things is that, of course, organization is key. Plan yourself with modules. Okay, and don't make it confusing to access the information. I'm sure most of you have a platform, so it could be, I'm not sure which platforms you are working at school, but there's Moodle, there's a Google Classroom, Edmodo, Schoology, there are quite a large variety of different modules that different platforms that enable us to have our information. So let's divide that into modules. All platforms have the same structure where they have like a type of folder, or you can call it a topic, or you can call it like something like that. Okay, so don't make it more confusing to access. So plan the module for the end of April, till the end of April. Okay, I'm going to be working like this. For example, I've also seen schools with very low level students using Padlet. Padlet is also, it's like a whiteboard, it's like a notice board, a digital notice board where people, you post comments, you post videos and that type of thing. So the main thing is that we need to have a way of communicating with our students what is to be expected. And don't make it confusing. We can plan the whole week, but we need to be able to see is how you're going to deliver that. If you're teaching young learners, maybe daily uploads, or you can do the day before, the night before, or that morning, daily uploads. Well, today we are going to be doing these 2 or 3 activities. Okay, those 2 or 3 activities could last quite a lot and have different steps, of course, but make it clear to our students that, okay, this is what you're expected to do today. We've discussed at our school whether if it's good to give them like the week or maybe day by day. And here it depends a lot with your director, so I recommend that you discuss it with them. The main thing is that if you give them the week of work, maybe a parent will misunderstand this and will put this child working, the whole week on one day. And then what do you do with that child? The rest of the week. So maybe following up day by day. Again, if you're working at a school, if you're working at a language institute, you might have to do it the day before you work. You have face-to-face contact with them. Just remind them of some of the work that they need to be doing. Think of possible problems and solutions ahead of time. I think this comes back to my TTC days when I was when I was training to become a teacher, and I remember the plans that we had to write, and we always had to think of all the problems and solutions. When it comes to online learning, this is the most important thing we need to think about, and go beyond the technology. Okay, because technology, sooner or later, you find it where it is. Okay, so what is causing problems? Is it causing problems? I see I've got a few questions on special educational needs. Don't make it more confusing. So keep the routine of, well, if you're going to work on Moodle, then you have the folder, maybe you have the week. So this week, today in class, in the video conferencing, we're going to be doing these 3 things, okay? And then maybe after the session, you upload the presentation or you upload whatever it is that you did during the video conferencing. And then the homework. Today you have to do this and this. These are the links, or these are the pages from your course book. This is the type of thing that we're talking about, okay? So don't make it more confusing for them. Think of the possible problems, and a lot of the problems have to do with organization. And this is the main thing that we struggle with our students in special educational needs, okay, is organizing. So make sure that it's clear, put the date. Less is more. Don't go over the top with instructions. If you have special educational needs and they struggle a bit with understanding instructions, write the explanation in Spanish, in your first language. Of course, the ideal thing is to use English, and during the video conferencing, that's when you take advantage. But if it's going to prevent the student from actually being able to do the task because they don't understand the instructions, then that's an issue. Remember that they don't have you there. So think about the level that you're teaching, think about the specific needs of the child, and if they need instructions to be put in their first language, then put it in their first language, because we are doing emergency remote teaching. We are based on a reality that, let's face it, face to face, if the child didn't understand the task, you would explain it to them again and again and again and again. And then what would happen? You either resort to their first language, or when you turn around, the student next to him will say, okay, this is what you have to do in the first language. So let's remove that barrier, especially when I hope that you understand that I'm saying remove the barriers in instructions, okay? Because we are teaching our subject. We need to be realistic, okay? There is a learning curve when it comes to anything that we learn as teachers, but it can't be a struggle every single time. So if you are planning on doing, for example, Moodle is fantastic. It has lots of options. But if you struggle with understanding how to create a quiz, and it takes you 5 hours to create a simple quiz that the kids will do in 10 seconds, then maybe it's not worth the tool. Maybe there's something else online that you can just pass the link and they can do. So work as a team. We all work at schools or language institutes. We have colleagues that, that teach the same subjects, the same levels, or maybe they teach a higher or lower level, but there are some things that we can combine. So this is the moment when we really need to stick together and take advantage of this. So talk to your colleagues. What do they know? What's working for them? What's not working for them? And combine it. So, well, maybe I remember when our first time of working in Plan Ceibal, if those of you who may not know, it's teaching English through video conferencing. So we never actually got to meet our students unless we had, some of us lived kind of close, so we were able to go there to the schools and actually meet our students. And I remember the first time that I remember waking up on Sunday afternoon thinking, how am I going to teach through video conferencing? We got our colleagues together and we set up a plan. So join with your colleagues. Another thing is, get your students involved. It shouldn't be just us that are doing everything. Take advantage of the situation and get your students more involved. Sometimes there's nothing better than growing through a crisis. So if we get our students involved, we will be able to learn from them, of course, but also get them more involved in their own learning, which is, at the end of the day, is what we really want. And of course, communicate often. Even if you teach, maybe, for example, at high school, I only teach twice a week, a certain level. They only see me twice a week, but they used to see me in the hallways, or they would say, Marco, can you? I'm struggling with this, and try to communicate often without going. Remember, this is a pendulum. We can't go from one extreme to the other. There can't be zero contact, but there can't also be 24-hour day, 24/7 contact. Okay, we do also have a life, and it's important that we separate our work and our life, especially today since we're all working from home. But we do need to be able to communicate often. So we need to have those open lines of communication. It could be through email, it could be through WhatsApp, it could be through the platform, depending on what the idea of your of your issue there. Okay, so for example, video conferencing is a very important aspect that we are doing. Okay, and it's really important for video presence. Okay, I'm reading here about low-tech options. So this is my low-tech option. If you have access to video conferencing, do it. If you do have problems with your internet, maybe we have good internet, but our students don't. At the beginning, maybe the first 5 minutes of the lesson, show your face. Hi, everyone. It's been great. It's great. How are you? Get that human quality of a teacher in those 5 minutes with a video presence. Don't think about the lesson. Just ask them how they are, that type of thing. Okay, guys, we're going to start with the lesson. I'm going to turn off the camera, and everybody turns off their camera. So that way you save bandwidth. And that way they can continue working regardless of being without the dependence of good internet. Okay, so probably if they turn off their cameras, it's going to be easier for them. And then maybe at the end, okay, everyone, let's turn on our cameras. Thank you for the session, and then you close the session. We need to be able to make the most of these video conferencing sessions. That's why I recommend to have a PowerPoint or something to keep you on track, because what happens is that kids kind of interrupt and ask all sorts of questions. Maybe your dog passes by and you've lost your class. Okay, so that if you have the PowerPoint presentation, if you can see the largest part of the screen is going to be the PowerPoint presentation. You have me on a corner there, and if my dog passes, you won't notice, hopefully. I don't have such a big dog. But also if you can have your back to like a wall or a screen, or put up, a sheet, so it's not distracting for your students, because this is the same as face-to-face teaching. If you stand by the door or by a window, you've lost your students. This is why a lot of us stand at the front, because we know that students are looking at the front, and behind us we have a whiteboard. We don't have possibilities of people walking behind us. So another tip in the video conferencing is allow time for the human, not just the teacher. We need to be humans, and kids really are, you are part of their lives. A lot of you reading, when I read your comments, where you were from, a lot of you are from the Northern Hemisphere. You are at the end of your academic year. You're near the end in term 3, more or less. Here in South America, we are at the beginning. We are the Southern Hemisphere. We're at the beginning of the academic year, and this was a very a huge shock to us. In my case, I got to meet my students for 2 weeks, and then schools were closed, so I didn't have the time to establish that bond yet. So this is why it's important to become human, to show them that you are not just a teacher. Those of you who have been teaching all year, you are a very important part of their routine, and they don't see you anymore. So maybe think about the times, of course you're teaching, but think about the times that they would come to your desk and ask a question, or they would share something with you. That has been lost. So these kids need at least a few minutes of, being a teacher, being a human. You are the support, and they don't have you. So that's an important thing that we need to take into consideration. Another thing that we might need to consider is don't expect the session to last the same amount of time in your classroom. As you know, kids don't have a long attention span. And if you're expecting them to spend, for example, I teach at a bilingual school, so we have 8 hours of school. It's ridiculous, to expect a child to be 8 hours on a screen. It's not feasible. It's not possible. It's exhausting. Plus, it's a child. And if you think about it, in face-to-face teaching, do you have that child 4 hours sitting? No, there are other things that they're doing. So there's other types of combinations of activities. If you teach at a language institute, it might be different, but I still don't think that the type of video conferencing, if it's too long, it will be a bit. Your students might not take full advantage of this. But invite student engagement, and this is key. Get students involved, not just through speaking. Other things, other tools that we can be using in video conferencing that can help us. And of course, be prepared for all sorts of questions. You might have some tech issues. Yesterday, I've been using Zoom for years, and yesterday I had a student that couldn't speak, and her microphone was on. Everything was working, but I couldn't hear her. Then we noticed it was something from her computer, but it took us 20 minutes. We missed one lesson and then 20 minutes of that lesson trying to help her out. Okay, so I always go try to, if you know how things work, then try to fix it, but don't spend too much time. Tell them, okay, let's Google a tutorial. Let's find out what's happening here. Okay. Let's have a look at some of activities that we can be doing. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, online learning has a lot of advantages, and one of them is that because it's a slower pace, we can do some really deep and meaningful learning. Okay, so why not try to use inquiry-based learning? It's the whole idea of inquiry-based learning is creating the need to know something, to raise that interest in our students. So the idea is that you show them a topic and get students to develop questions. Students research the topic in class. This is in general the inquiry-based. In this case, maybe they can do it not during the video conferencing. Okay, there's a research behind that. Then they present. In Zoom, they can present also. You have to make it available for them to share their screen. You can do it manually. They can send it to you beforehand, and you can share it for them. I would probably suggest doing that. So if they do a PowerPoint presentation, and then students reflect on what worked and what didn't work. Inquiry-based is fantastic, and one of the greatest things about English is that we can do whatever we want as long as we go through the channels of language. So if you have a topic if you're teaching, for example, usually around this time, maybe you're, well, it depends on the syllabus, but maybe sometimes a lot of the books focus on the past. Okay, so you learn about past activities, past things, the idea of teaching past tenses. So tell them about a moment in history that they're interested in. Ask them, what would you like to know about that? Get them to research. Get them to maybe watch something on Netflix that is on that topic. Get them to find a video, find them information. Students present what they learned, so they show the class what they've learned, and there you can extract all the language items that you need to extract. They can be afterwards, they can reflect on what they're doing. Some of the tips that I would suggest with inquiry-based learning, especially with young learners, is we need to be safe with online research and keep our students safe. This is the most important thing. So narrow down the choices, maybe give them links. So, okay, you can get the information from these areas. Now, a lot of publishers, a lot of virtual libraries have made available for free to access their databases. So because during this, this epidemic, pandemia, we are going through this. So you can take advantage of that and say, okay, guys, you need to research information from this source. Okay, so in this way, you can actually give them, you're narrowing down the choice, making sure that they research things that are safe. Because one of the things that we sometimes take for granted is the great work that a IT department does in the places where you work. IT department, one of the aspects that they do is that they make sure that everything that they search online is safe. So there's no, they don't access inappropriate materials or on purpose or by accident. So that those filters will not necessarily be on their computers at home. So because let's face it, at home, it's different. I don't have filters like that in my computer at home, but I'm an adult. So, we need to be able to, I'm not worried about that type of thing because I just don't access it. But with children, you don't know, because maybe by clicking, they end up doing looking things that they shouldn't be doing. So be safe and give them the links. Think of the final outcome and then all the small steps that need to go into getting to that final outcome. Okay, online learning needs specific step-by-step guides. We need to be able to, because they're not there with you. A lot of the times, if you think about when you set up a project, when you set up a task, many times students ask questions about instructions. So this is something that we need to be clear from the beginning, okay, and state these are the instructions, this is what you need to do, and don't complicate it. Step 1, research using these links, okay? Step 2, what is the important information here, okay? Very, very simple. Maybe have some WH questions, where, what, why, and then they present, okay? And then, of course, it's always a reflection of what worked, what didn't, okay? What information was interesting for you? Did you get parents involved or not? That type of thing, okay? And this is, you can send these presentations that they can share through the cloud or the platform, depending on what you are working on with at school, okay? Another thing is project-based learning. Design projects with short-term goals. Again, you need to guide students with step-by-step. So one of the things that I used to love as a child was doing the germinators, the famous germinators. Remember where you would get the little seeds on the cotton and then see how they would sprout? That type of thing was fantastic. And a lot of it had to be done at home. Sometimes they did it at school and you would see the plants growing. Get them to do that at home. That type of thing, but we need to have short-term goals. Okay, we are going to do, this is the first thing we need to do, get the materials. Now, the process behind it. These are the type of things that we need to be able to keep in mind. And I see some questions about assessment. Projects can be assessed perfectly. Think about the presentation and the reflection and the process. So this is why short-term goals help. So what I do at school, I do a lot of short-term goals and deadlines because I teach secondary school. I need to keep my students in line with when it comes to deadlines. So by Friday, you should have done this. By Wednesday, you should have done this. So they have step-by-step guidance. And this is very useful for young learners as well. Okay, so when the parent sees the project, they see step-by-step. Okay. If you prefer to, instead of giving them the final outcome, if you prefer to give them daily or weekly, or however you want to do it, step 1, we need to do this. So today we are going to do this. Tomorrow, and then maybe show 1 or 2 steps at a time. That is up to you. But the idea is that all the tasks need to be divided into very small, different tasks. Another thing, another activity is flipped classrooms. I'm sure that you are aware of flipped classrooms. They're fantastic, and it's something great that we can do today. So the idea behind flipped classrooms is that students would watch a video. It could be created by you, or it could be created, you could find it online. There's so many things out there online. If you want to create it yourself, again, because I'm a control freak, I usually create my own videos. I use a program called Screencast-O-Matic. Okay, and this allows me to record my sessions, Screencastify. There are many different free versions of screencasting. The idea is that it records your screen and then you can talk over it and you can send that to your students, okay? That you send through, and then maybe add a link to an activity. A lot of our course books have online course books or online activities. If not, there are many online very quick activities to check understanding. British Council has fantastic exercises for children, so take advantage of that webpage. And, you know, get kids doing them. It has to be something that you don't have to correct. Okay, so very quickly it can be corrected, and that way you can, you know, you can go through it. They can check. If they have any questions, what I would do probably is look at the exercise and find more or less, assume more or less, okay, they're probably going to have problems with this exercise, this number 1, 3, and 5. So the next, in the video conferencing session, you bring up these 1, 3, 5 exercises, you go over why they had problems, and then get to that topic at a deeper level. So maybe you use it to present language, and then in the face-to-face session, you do, you know, how to use it. You know, they practice it, take advantage of this. Okay, because what we need to do is that when a lot of the times we present information. So it can be done through videos, or even get students to present information. It's the same thing that we would do face-to-face. Get kids to present a topic of items of vocabulary. Why should it always be us? In fact, if you get them to say, if you have the possibility for them to work in pairs, in groups, it's a great idea. There are so many, you know, they can WhatsApp each other, they can work together, even if they remotely, they can have a Google Docs and they can all put, you know, add their thoughts. What this allows them to do is that they're able to work as a team together and be able to share these, you know, these findings, be able to share what they're doing and working in groups. One of the things that these kids are doing is that they're missing a lot their interaction in the classroom. Okay, so with this case, get kids involved, get kids, you know, working together, put them in groups. Maybe if you want to talk to them beforehand, say who, if they know who they can actually contact, it's easier to contact face-to-face or by email, Google Docs, and they can share. There's so many things that they can do, and that way they're interacting with each other, which is something that they've missed. Don't expect that interaction to be in English. That's part, but it's the same if they were doing the project at home. They're probably not going to speak English, but at least, you know, give this option. And then during video conferencing, okay, you will see on the screen there that all of a sudden, these are some of the videos that I did. If you're using Zoom, you have the option of video, of annotating. You won't be able to annotate now, I think, because this is a webinar, but the annotation tools are great because you can actually, you as a teacher and your students can share, okay, are able to draw, and you can share whiteboards, okay, or you can share slides. Here, for example, I've got 2 images, and what the kids are doing is that they are joining, matching, okay. We are at the bottom, we are playing tic-tac-toe. So for example, maybe they said orange, and they would choose the orange, okay. And again, these are the things that I just shared my screen, and then they can draw on top of that. Okay, so let the kids participate, have fun. Okay, if you want to do Pictionary, one of the things that I would do my last 5 minutes of my lesson is I would draw things to see if my kids could guess the different items of vocabulary. I can't draw. I don't have talent, but they had a lot of fun trying to find out, you know, try to figure out what item of vocabulary I was talking about. So it might be useful if you want to join the different, take advantage. So annotating tools, you've got to share the whiteboard. When you decide on the bottom where you have to share the screen, when you decide to share before you have the screen options, and then you have a whiteboard. So share the whiteboard, and get drawing, share slides. Don't it just be you speaking and them, and there's lots of games. Think about the games that you would do on the computer in class, on simple games, and get them involved. Okay. Drawing with a mouse, it's even harder. So enjoy it, have fun. At least remove that, sense of we have to always be in control type of, this is serious. We need to work. We do need to work, but we also worked face to face and had fun. So if there's a way that we can add a few games, then do this. Another game that I love, and I actually did it last week, and I had lots of fun. It was a scavenger hunt. Okay. I divided my groups into groups. Zoom has the opportunity for breakout groups. I know we've had some webinars on how to use breakout groups. So when Paul gives you the links, go through. If you don't know how to use it, there are some suggestions there. And then there's always thousands of tutorials on breakout rooms, okay, for Zoom. I'm not aware of any other video conferencing tools that allows video conferencing in their free versions as well. Okay, so I'm sorry, I can't give you any tips on the other softwares that are out there. But what I do is that I give them a list of items. So I take advantage of some vocabulary items that I'm doing. And so I had a long list of things that they had to find. I put them into groups, and I gave them 5-10 minutes. I would jump in and out of the groups, and they would have to go and search for these items. Okay. And then we came back together, and and they were able to, I have this, and that way it was a fun game. It lasted 10 minutes, but they had fun. So you make a list of objects, and students need to bring it. Scavenger hunts are not to be done every single lesson, because they do take up a bit of time, but it is a fun way of revising vocabulary. And some fun things to collect, for example, a dirty sock, or the strange pet, or you can even ask them to invent something. So one of the things that we had to do, for example, was a famous character. So they would dress up as a character, as a famous person, and they would have to speak and introduce themselves, and then we had to guess who it was. So those type of games are still fun and can be done. Charades, this is still something that can be done. Miming, you mime an action and they have to guess. We have videos. If you have the option of video, you can do it. Pictionary with the whiteboard as well. That's even more fun because it's complete chaos. Then you can do cameras on and off, audio on and off. Have fun with this. In group of students, put them in groups, and they have to describe one of the rooms they're in. Then they come back all together, all the classes together. So group one, turn off your cameras. All the group one turns off their cameras, and they describe the room. The others have to guess whose room is being described. Okay, these are some of the games and the fun, that you can have in your lessons, because the idea, of course, is that, the idea is that you have fun with this. So we need to be able to, we've already hit the stress level. I think it's time to calm down now and say, okay, let's make our lessons fun again. Let's enjoy what we're doing. Okay, and these are some of the tips that we can do. So bring things that used to work in the classroom, and how can we adapt them to the online world? Okay, so here are some of the tips that I have. And some of the final recommendations that I have is combine synchronous and asynchronous communication. Have the clear aims. Make sure that their student knows, not just for that lesson, but for the week. Make sure that they know what they're supposed to be doing. Maybe again, if you're working in school, maybe give them the daily, or maybe the next 2 or 3 days work. give them the aim and tell them what they're supposed to be doing, which day. If you work in a language institute that maybe you have 2 or 3 times a week, maybe give them the weekly aims, okay? And make the most of the tools that we have. So if you're using Moodle, make the most of it. If you're using Google Classroom, make the most of it. If you're using Zoom, make the most of it. Before, test everything out, okay? Even the free version of Zoom allows you to put people in groups, but you have to go to the settings to make it available. Okay, so when you create your account, you go to settings and scroll down to where it says Breakout Rooms, and then you make it available there. I recommend that you Google where you can find all of this information. And so find out and then test it with your family. Have your computer, get your phone, and that way you can get your, somebody else's phone, in a tablet, whatever, and that way you can play around to see how it looks. Okay. And less is more. Less in the sense of amount. Okay. Try to go deeper instead of always staying at the top. Okay. We can't teach this at the same speed as we would in the face-to-face. And it's not something that, this is the first thing we need to be able to accept ourselves. I think our heads have accepted it, directors have accepted it, but ourselves, we haven't. So try to get to a deeper level of understanding, choose which things can be sacrificed and which can't. And this is not forever. Okay, so we'll be able to catch up later on, but try to make sure that we continue, because it's all about routines and habits. Have a routine in your classroom, have a routine, of work, making sure that the kids are still working, that they're getting to a deeper level of understanding. Explore some of the things that face-to-face was difficult. So for example, writing, take advantage of writing. Get kids to write more. Okay, it's something that it's calming, it's soothing. Get them to explain maybe drawings in writing and speaking, because they don't only have to not only can they write, they can also send audio. If you have all you need is a platform, a place where they can upload audios and send speaking homework as well. Have clear instructions. If you feel that your students will benefit more in their first language, then put it in their first language. These are instructions and these are specific times. In my case, if I'm doubting, again, I have secondary school and I don't need to put them into my first language. But maybe if you're going to do this, put in English and then the translation. English translation, English translation. Again, if this is a possibility, if this is multilingual, then images. Okay, use images as well. But if the student, again, needs the first language to understand instructions, then we are facing a different situation, and we can't put everything that we did in the face-to-face in video conferencing. Okay, because you're not physically there with them. Your physical presence has a calming effect on them as well. Communicate, set short-term goals, communicate often, be online but not 24/7. We, especially those of us who work at schools, we have a certain timetable, so respect that timetable. Parents or students might email you later on, respond the next day. Maybe you can tell them that they can email you. One of the benefits, for example, of email, of asynchronous communication, is that they can communicate with you whenever they have the opportunity, but you don't have to respond at the same speed. So if they respond, for example, if they send you an email at 10 o'clock at night, then I'm not going to respond at 10. I'm going to respond the next day during my working hours. Okay, so in that sense, respect your timetable. So because we're in for the long haul, so we need to be able to find a balance. Okay, so thank you very much. I am going to look at now at some of the questions. Okay, so Maya, is that right, Paul? I can start looking. Yes, okay.
Do. Yes, absolutely.
All right, so lots of questions in the Q&A, so I'll get started.
Questions, yeah.
Maya, I'm going to try and make my best at pronouncing names. I do apologize for the mistakes I will make. Maya mentions, how long should a one-session online class take, supposing that the actual face-to-face class takes 90 minutes? Again, it depends on the age, but maybe if it's, first of all, do you have 90 minutes every single day? If it's 90 minutes every day, maybe have 40 minutes of a session and then leave 40 minutes of work. Okay. That's probably my recommendation, but again, you need to decide with your school how it's going to be implemented, because this also has to do with school decisions. But yes, 90 minutes is probably too much for very young learners. So also it depends on the age. Okay, so maybe if you're going to have a video conferencing session, if you can do video conferencing for a little bit and then the next amount of time do something else or do some group work in the middle, that way it can be a bit more relaxing. Techno Kamen asks, I've heard about inquiry-based learning. My problem is, so this has been answered. My problem is the procedure. I'm asking if this can work during the lesson or if the learner should be given a topic or do the research after present the findings later during next session. Techno, with inquiry-based learning, if it's the first time you're doing it and you're going to be doing this online, maybe my recommendation would be to maybe all focus on the same topic, okay? And that way you can do the step-by-step, divided, take it slow, and that way go step-by-step, okay? And do it all together. That way they are aware, and maybe further on in May, you do it again, okay? And maybe more personalized. It's all about practice as well. We have lots of questions. Hang on. Okay. Okay. Huyen mentions how are the students who live in remote areas learn online? The main thing is, do they have internet connections? If not, then how would you do the online learning? If they access, for example, if they need to move to a place to have access and then go back home, as long as it's a safe area, because of course we need the safety of our students, I would probably, what I would do with this in this case is probably upload PDFs so they can download, they can do the work and then go back. If they have options, for example, of Google Docs, that you can have the option of working offline, that they can do at home. When they go to the computer, when they have an internet connection, they can do the work and then, and they go back and forward. So try to make that available.
Yeah, we've had this question, I think, in a couple of other webinars, and I think, the advice was very similar to what you've just said, Maria Jose. It's if there's intermittent access to internet, so like you say, if they go somewhere to get online, then sharing things that they can access when they are online and do offline, and then when they go back online to share the answers or send their answers when they're back online. It's obviously a difficult one, but
it's not easy, but you would have to adapt to the type of things. Niguan mentions how to make a conference with a shared screen and a camera. We are talking like that. What I did, you just share the screen and turn your camera. If you're not sure how to do this, I recommend you look at some tutorials. Zoom has great tutorials on doing this if you're using Zoom. If Google Meet is the same, you have the option of sharing your screen. Golam Reza mentions, what is the most important practice in online teaching? Relax, have fun. I think that's the first thing we need to realize. We are in a new world. But the most thing I would probably say is we need to understand that don't let your pedagogy change. If you were getting students more involved, if you were doing collaborative work, if you were don't just you all the time. We can't be all the time giving instructions. Is there a way where we can get students more involved and it will be less pressure on us? So I would probably try to see if you can find the pedagogy that you did face-to-face and adapt it to the online world. Which app or website is useful to create online tests? Google Forms, probably the easiest way to go. You have the options. If it's multiple choice, it corrects itself, so that's always a bonus. And you can also create like maybe longer answers and just correct that. So I'll probably go along that line. Sophia mentions assessment is one of my worries. Is feedback, of course. Maybe do more formative assessment. The assessment where we control the situation is not possible. So maybe, go ahead and have a look at that. Okay. Julia, what could be the effective way of the new grammar to be introduced to young learners? Videos, and then videos before the session, and then in class in the video conferencing together to reinforce that. That's probably the best way that I would go, especially because of now. Okay. How can we make writing activities more interactive and engaging online mode? Get them involved. Do it in pairs. Use Google Docs. Use if you have Google, I think there's also Microsoft Teams that you can use collaborative work depending on what your school uses. But if you have nothing, I think Google Docs is free. They just need a Gmail account and they can share. So I would probably do that, and then they share it with you, and you can make comments and stuff. I was having a session, and the students, it mentions. I lost the question. Yesterday, I was having a session, and the student left me and sent without saying goodbye. I motivate students to be motivated all the time. This is the same in face-to-face teaching. Okay, if your students aren't motivated in the class, it will happen online as well. Lack of interaction, lack of motivation is a bit of an issue, but try to also, what I would probably recommend is getting parents involved. Maybe it was a problem that the student had. It could have been something that they needed to leave. But I would probably get parents involved there.
I think that's a very good point that you make there around the similarities with face-to-face online. A lot of what we're doing in the online classroom, the experience that we have as face-to-face teachers can be very useful. And a lot of the time, I think it's thinking about what would I do in this situation in terms of motivation, for example. How would I do that in a face-to-face classroom? Okay, how can I adapt that, or how can I find strategies that are going to work online? Mm-hmm. Obviously, these sessions are designed to help you, these webinars. But I think you know your students, you know what's going to motivate them. So I think applying what you do face-to-face to online is the answer.
And getting your heads involved. This is one of the things when you had, for example, I'm reading here some, Dr. Ripali asks about behavioral issues. What would you do face-to-face? If it's something that you can't handle, get your heads involved. So I would don't try to do too much with technology-wise. Take advantage of this is all teamwork, so get the heads involved if there's an issue. Sudhakar, again, I'm really sorry about the pronunciation. Making Zoom more securely. This is an issue. It's been all over the media. Get waiting rooms. Use waiting rooms. This is an option for free as well. So in Zoom, put how to enable waiting rooms, and that means that what you do is that you go into the online and you only allow those who you recognize. So get students to say, to enter the Zoom, you need name and surname. If not, you will not be able to enter. So waiting room, what it does, it's like the door. It's the physical door that we have. So you open the room, when face-to-face, you open the door and you let your students in. You don't let people that you don't know in. This is the same thing. So the waiting room allows that. And that has been a huge success in that sense. And then there are other options as well. And if you Google it, but I think that's the basic one is waiting room. That changes everything. And if they misbehave, you can always remove them. They can come back in, but at least they can feel the shock of this is enough. Well, Nasir, you're asking if it's safe for young learners. It is.
Yeah.
Paul, did you want to add?
No, I mean, yes, okay. I mean, just very quickly to add something to that. But at the British Council, with the teaching centres at the moment, we were using for young learners a platform called EtonX. That's now been changed, so we're using Zoom for young learners. Yes, there were issues around security with young learners, but I think those have been mostly resolved now. So it's now something that the British Council is using with their young learner classrooms is Zoom. So, yeah, Jen, sorry, you're asking about EtonX. It's a similar platform to Zoom, to Teams, etc., etc. I don't use it personally, but it's there have been issues around the technology, I think, with it.
Mm-hmm. We have a really good question here. Tomorrow's my first online teaching to kids, despite being in this career for 8 years. I'm nervous. Please give me some advice. Relax. You've got this. You've been a teacher for 8 years. Then just go with the base. What's the basics? Smile, keep calm. When everything else, panics, you keep calm. Well, this is the same thing. Practice beforehand. If you're going to do the online session, make sure that you know how to open the session, how to share the slides, and that's it. Okay.
And sorry, and
Yep.
also, it's going to be their first time online, so it's going to be new, I think, for all of you. So no one expects it to be the perfect class or exactly the same as a face-to-face class. That there are going to be differences. Parents should understand that. Kids are going to understand that this is something new. So go with that, I think, as Maria said.
Can you recommend fun videos to teach English grammar in a high school? Thuong, you're asking this. Go on British Council online, British Council children, and British Council young learners. Sorry, and British Council teenagers. Google that, and you will find the websites. Okay, they're fantastic. They've got loads of material and fun videos and things. Can I suggest another technique to motivate students? I have raised my hand to speak. Dorsaf, you can't speak in a webinar. You might have to type your comments. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. We're not. Yes, you can't. You're right. Yeah, you can't speak. You've got 1,000 people.
Is it possible to allow students to unenroll themselves from Google Classroom? No. As far as I know, you can't. Once you enroll, they can remove themselves. But if they're removing themselves, again, what would you do if a student leaves your classroom? You get your heads involved. Get parents involved. We need to get parents on our sides. We have just started reading in first grade class here, and I find it really difficult to achieve any results. How can I make it more effective? Using audiobooks. Or maybe you get yourself use the reading, maybe a screencast yourself. Screenomatic, again, it's a really free and it's a fantastic tool. And as you move like the mouse, it shows like a yellow circle. So it shows that maybe you want to read. You record yourself reading, and then that way the student can start reading in that sense. But yes, those of you who are starting the year, it's been difficult. The breakout rooms, yes, the breakout rooms are available on the free version, but you need to activate them. And this is in the free version, it's there. Okay, so you need to go to your settings and find it. Google, what is it? A tutorial, and you'll find it. How can we involve passive students in Zoom Zoom classes if they were passive in live classes? First of all, I think one of the benefits that we have online is for these passive learners. First of all, you need to know is it because they're unmotivated, or because they are, or because they have this issue of that they're shy. If they're unmotivated, find ways of that has to do with motivation. If it has to do with the fact that they're shy, maybe get them to type. That way they can at least start to incorporate, give them the option of typing, and maybe little by little, okay, maybe having smaller groups, using the breakout rooms in Zoom will be easier for you in that sense as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, lots of questions about assessment.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you've talked about formative assessment and ways of doing that, and I think that's fine. Obviously, with summative assessment, where it's a test, that there is no really easy answer for that. I presume that you're kind of asking, or these questions are being asked because you're wanting to find out if there's a way that we can stop students from cheating. There is no simple answer to that.
Because
if they're at home and you've sent them a test and they need to do it, and you say do this on your own, and they're at home, there really is very little way to do that. You could potentially set up, if you're using Zoom or something like that, you could potentially have them on camera, and they have the test there in front of them that they've printed off, and they're writing it, so you can kind of see them. But then they can switch the cameras off, and they could have their phone in the corner. There really isn't an answer to that as yet. I'm sure there one will be developed, but at the moment we can't answer it.
Yeah, we don't have that level of Big Brother yet.
No. I have heard. I think it's TOEFL, perhaps, and have found a way that they're kind of allowing for the exam to happen, and IELTS are looking for ways to make this happen. So there are sort of solutions being explored to stop kind of cheating, but at the moment there isn't anything sort of completely foolproof.
And it will be expensive.
Yes.
Yes. Guaranteed, at least at the beginning. Here's an interesting question about what do we do when parents are sitting next to the kids during the lesson and dictating and interpreting all the time. The best part is when the parents actually give the students the answer. That's going to happen. Let's try to tell and make parents maybe get your heads to write an email in general that we want to thank parents, for participating, but we do need children to focus. So please allow them to, go through the process. Maybe go along the lines like that. But it's not easy when parents. It's like teaching with parents in the class. It's not easy.
You can play a game, I mean, I don't know, parents, you've got 2 minutes, go outside of the room. I don't know. I mean, it's, you can kind of bring them into the class and use them as a tool, if you like, to get them to disappear and hide, or I don't know, or something like that. I don't know. If you want to have a break in the class, yeah, exactly. If you want to have a break, or if you have to do a 90-minute lesson, then why not kind of get the parents to go and hide somewhere, and you've got 5 minutes to go and find it, and then come back and carry on with the lesson. I don't know. I mean,
sounds good. I like that.
Well, it's a suggestion.
Ian asks, what type of movement, type of activities are there? Where can we find them? I would probably, that would be great, actually. You might be able to do, for example, like Simon Says. All right, so you can practice verbs. Those are usually lots of fun. So I'll probably add something like that. Just tell them they have to stand up and move away from the camera. So find the right distance, because then they might only just see your tummy, and the idea is that they see the whole body. So that would be an issue. Okay.
I'm just aware of time, actually, because there's lots and lots of questions, and we're not going to kind of get through all of this. I think there's still 71 open questions. So
impossible.
I think we could be here all afternoon. Well, in your case, all morning. And we've kind of run over. I think fantastic, Maria Jose, for answering as many of those questions as you can.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate that. And hopefully, certainly from the comments, it looks like it's been very much appreciated as well. So thank you for that. Really good, really interesting, and lots of great ideas there as well. So hopefully that's given everyone watching some ideas and some help. We've got another session for young learners, for primary learners. That's going to be on Monday. You can see that on the Teaching English website. You should also be able to see on the screen there, because some people have been asking about the recording. That's going to be available. That first link at the top will be the recording will be available there, probably later today, or certainly early tomorrow. all our resources to support teachers during the COVID-19 crisis are available at that link. If you go to the homepage, all of this is there on the homepage of Teaching English. So you can go to the Teaching English website and all of those links are there as well. But we have lesson plans that we are adapting for online teaching for if you're teaching adults or secondary or primary. There are around about 5 or 6 lesson plans, I think, at the moment. We're adapting more every week. There's the wonderful link to the certificates that you can see there. There is a link to a survey. It's a slightly different survey. The survey that will open up on your screen after this webinar is a feedback from this specific webinar. That survey that you can see on your screen now, the FBQRXTJ, is it's more a general survey about your needs as teachers and teacher educators, so we can be a bit more specific in what we do to support you. Facebook, there's our Facebook page. We are running a series of Facebook Lives every week, which is slightly different, obviously, to the webinars. They include 2 panelists and a host, and we try and, a little bit like what Maria Jose has been doing for the last 20 minutes, we try and answer as many questions as possible. So go to the Teaching English Facebook page. There's information about the Facebook Lives and also lots of resources there for you. As I said, with the certificates, if you come to the site later, if you go to the Teaching English website later today, there you'll see a link to the certificate and also the slides that Maria Jose has been using for the presentation. They are available as a PDF. You will also get an email tomorrow around the time this webinar is finished, this time tomorrow, with a link, with links to certificates, etc. there. Okay, I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to say. Maria Jose, you've been talking for a long time, so I'll let you get back to your life,
Thank
your
you.
family, to your 1-year-old, and thanks ever so much for giving up your time, and thank you to everyone for coming, and hopefully we will see you on Monday for our next webinar. I think it's slightly later time, so 12 p.m. UK time, so midday UK time. Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Maria Jose. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
We'll see you
Bye-bye.
next time. Bye.